I should really make my next video on Star Rail lore. I got caught up with work and uni stuff. At least I wrote this video on the 20th of February, so this was at least ready. To this video, of course there'll be spoilers for the 4.0 Honkai Star Rail story quest, so please be warned. Also, it was really fun to play a game where a red-haired person who is potentially pretending to be someone who has died, and we have our sense of reality altered, and we also went to a high school. It was fun to play Persona 5 Royale. Anyway, back to Star Rail. The first idea is the theory of the identity of the murderer and what is different. What we know for sure is that during the year when Himeko competed in the Phantasmoon games, or the person who claims to be Himeko, a contestant or supplicant, dubbed the Herald of Death by Ashveils, came to Graphia Academy and massacred the students there in an attempt to gain wish power. The supplicant was later executed, or believed to be executed, as when the next Phantasmoon games begin, the ones we are currently participating in, the Sinwish Syndicate and Scott were attacked and supposedly killed by a person who left the same mark of the blood handprints. This theory will present three possible solutions. Number one, it being the same person as the original Herald of Death. Two, it being an imaginary. Or the third option, it is an unrelated third party. The reason it being the same person is Ashveils asks Kuichiba that did anyone witness the execution and what evidence do they have to prove that they never released the Herald of Death and decisively that they have executed them. This means that the Kuichiba and the government have kept the Herald of Death alive for the next Phantasmoon games, and without any decisive witness or evidence to prove that they were executed, the possibility that the original killer was released is still there. The second option of it being an imaginary is brought to the idea with, we know that artists can create imaginary by drawing them and giving them names. This means that anyone can create imaginary if they are able to give them enough wish power to fuel them and sustain them. The killer could be an imaginary that was created by a random person, which I do not believe would happen, as I personally believe no one would want to bring back the Herald of Death. The more likely option is that before the death, the Herald of Death created an imaginary to take over themselves after they die. They were taught the methods and helped trained by the original Herald of Death. This idea of the imaginary being the one that we are currently having to experience, or the one being the current killer, would also potentially bypass the rules of supplicants cannot enter the games after their first and only attempt to enter the games, as the original and the imaginary would be technically two different people, as the original was a human, or potentially a different species, who was executed, while the imaginary is an entirely separate entity. The third option is we know that the Herald of Death used their killings to gain wish power, and we know from Kuichiba and Ashveils, no one else has used that same calling card of the handprints, but that, however, does not mean that someone won't, or will not ever use it again. This presents the idea that Pearl from the IPC is potentially the killer, as they are focused with efficiency, and the killer's methods would be an efficient way to gain wish power for a contestant. However, the main drawback of this theory and my idea is that I believe Pearl would never want to do this, as personally I don't believe she would think murder was a valid way to go about gaining wish power. The only evidence I can present that it would be Pearl is that Pearl is focused with efficiency and does prioritize that, and she is also able to replicate the handprints, as we know in Pearl's office when Himeko and Welt met her. When she was talking with Jade, she briefly goes over how she is trying to achieve a replica and has been able to recreate it with 96.2% color replication and a 93.6% brushstroke reproduction. So it would be an almost perfect replica. This idea presents that she uses her abilities and efficiency and her preciseness to replicate the handprints while also going about trying to gain wish power to fuel herself. The next idea is Ashveils' identity. This was written previous and before 4.1 trailer had come out. I personally believe that Ashveil is linked to the veracity, as not only does their design scream veracity with their teeth along the coat, the hat and general design, and a shark-like tooth-like necklace, and like the zigzag mouth on their right hand, their inner coat also has a variety of eyes on the inside, which is similar to the portal Ouroboros is seen leaving in their splash art. Their left-hand glove, sorry, I was trying to think about their model. Their left-hand glove also has a mouth-like detail on the back of their hand. Their right hand has a red crest or mark thing and a stake-like thing piercing through his hand and wrist. Ashveil also has a lot of crescent moon imagery on them, and the wolf insignia on their hat could link them to La Mancha, the Galaxy Ranger, which, to be honest, Ashveil is most certainly La Mancha, as their design is similar to other Galaxy Rangers, such as Boot Hill, and we've seen. And Ashveil does know about Dr. Primitive's mimetic virus and is eager to stop us from using it at all, and he is seen with a victim of it. The other reason I believe he is tied with the veracity is after meeting Silverwolf, one of the first things he asks her is, "Oh, she must be here to kill me," and is disappointed and finding it strange she is not there to do that or to deliver him food. I don't believe that the deliver food is a throwaway line, as it would also reinforce the veracity and its unsatiating hunger. I think that because of the crest or mark on his hand is related to the veracity, as he might be an unwilling or accidental pathstrider of it, and doesn't want to be, similar to how Firefly is technically a pathstrider of the propagation due to, in law, her drawing powers from that path as a clone from the Glumoth Empire. But neither her or Ashveil are aligned solely with that path, as both of them would be against it, and instead follow different paths or would emulate the paths, such as La Mancha, the Hunt as a Galaxy Ranger, and Firefly technically in law finality or destruction in game. But they would both be people who are drawing power from paths they resent and go actively against, or technically being pathstriders of a different path. Another one is the Himeko's truth. Okay, so good news, you don't have to worry about him good news for all the Honkai Impact third players. You won't have to worry about Himeko and leaving the Express, as she already might be dead, so that's good. Either way, Himeko or the person claiming to be her father is lying, and I believe this is the shortest and easiest subject, as one of them has to be telling the truth, giving us a decisive 50-50. Himeko claims that her father was absent during her time in the Phantasmoon games, and she fought for her life against the Herald of Death, and that the person claiming to be her father is an imposter. The person claiming to be her father, or I will just be calling her father from now on to shorten it, her father claims that she died during the Phantasmoon games, and he knows that as he stood before her grave. With the belief that Himeko we know is an imagine, as her family members or friends with their Graphia heritage, or just general collective wish power, would have been able to create a fake Himeko after she was killed by the Herald of Death, and her memories were changed to replicate this. So instead of dying, or having the thought that Himeko did die, it would have been her living, or somehow barely scraping by. As this would align with the fact she claimed she fought for her life against a killer, which would align with the altered memories. This would have all had to have been done, however, without her father knowing she was replaced, as he is seemingly surprised to see her. Beep. Therefore, I believe that her father is the Imagine, as she claims that her father had been absent, but the Imagine would have been created to be a fill-in for the Dean, while her father was away from Planar Arcadia at the time. And the fact we know of Sparkle and Sparksy is that Imagine can be created to fulfill goals while looking similar or near identical to the person who created them, or the original person they are trying to replicate. The main theory, and the main point I believe Himeko is alive, and that the person claiming to be her father is either an Imagine or just might be her father, but just doesn't really pay attention because he's absent, is that Imaginae require wish power to stay alive and is their fuel, and they need either wish power or the Phantasmoon to survive. This means that if Himeko was an Imaginae or a fake, she would have potentially died after leaving Planar Arcadia, whereas the supposed Dean, who would have been forced to stay, could survive, as he would be a fill-in for the original Dean of Graphia Academy, where he would have to be in Planar Arcadia the entire time, and this is where the memories change and why he believes she's fake. And the reason that the memories could be him believing that Himeko died is for the Imaginae to focus on their role as the Dean by presenting the idea or altering the fake father's memories to make it think Himeko had died after she had left Planar Arcadia. As if, most likely, if it was her real father, or the Imaginae thought he was her real father, he would have tried leaving Planar Arcadia to find her, and unfortunately would have died without wish power or the Phantasmoon game. The next idea is that Evanscia has a piece of the script. At the start of 4.0, we see Evanscia reading something, and she saw a vision of the Astral Express exploding or having a malfunction. I believe what she was reading, or more appropriately, was witnessing, was the script. I believe that the script has multiple ways to present or convey its information, which I will be going over in my Terminus Trailblazer video. I still haven't released that yet. I'm a bit behind with uni work. Yeah. And with the script having multiple ways to present or convey information, and the idea of it being a version of the future that might come to be, could be backed up by Silverwolf and Blade's involvement in Planar Arcadia, which the Celeron Hunters tend to have a more relaxed approach to their involvement unless they would need to actively attend and interact with the Trailblazer or Astral Express or any faction to help push the future towards a certain goal. And we know that the Stellaron Hunters have already established they are trying to work in the best interest of the Astral Express and the universe. The Stellaron Hunters are most likely here to assist the Trailblazer and Astral Express, but there could be a chance they're here to collect the piece of the script, which was planned to be given either on purpose or accidentally to Evanscia, who helps the Trailblazer when they meet by giving them a mask. And the way Evanscia could be given the script, or a piece of it, would A, align with the Stellaron Hunters' goals to help the Trailblazer, and B, would also be similar to how they helped Dahlia, and how Dahlia gave the Trailblazer their memories back after Penacony in 3.8. The next one is Evanscia's identity. We know that she exists in the courtyard, and she did exist in Planar Arcadia before we met her, as the photo in the school was crossed out partially, and there are similar looking things to her across the city of Planar Arcadia with the pink fox motif. I believe she is locked in the courtyard and is able to create masks because she is a part of the game itself, potentially like a referee, someone who helps the game run. And the one that we have met is different to the one who supposedly gained a mask. And that one who gained a mask is a variant of herself, like an Imaginae, who is different and able to compete, as the Imaginae would be able to compete, as previously in my kill identity of the Herald of Death, I put forward the idea of the Imaginaes and original people being separate entities, and able to compete both of them despite technically being the same person. I also believe that Evanscia is a pure child or related to the pure child of Anasphora, as her existence would have to be, and because of this, if she is a pure child or related to them in any way, her existence would have to be an absolute fact, such as with Cyrene and how she was used as an anchor point to ground Iron Tomb in the past. With Evanscia's existence being an absolute fact, when she became part of the game, the original was taken away and put in the courtyard, and an Imaginae was created to act as a replacement, or to patch whatever hole she had left behind when she joined the games. And this replacement would be able to actively join the games and pretend to be her in reality. This would also explain why her picture is partially crossed out, as the idea of her existing is still there. However, it would be a different entity still technically. And I believe that the pure child of Nasra part of her, potentially, would not be able to function that well with the Imagine, as either paths overlapping with elation and remembrance is what also caused people to be able to remember she existed, but also her face be obscured, as it isn't truly her. We know that she had a book at the beginning of 4.0 that she was reading, and she also had art supplies to create a mask for the Trailblazer, so she has to be somewhat involved in the games, or have the ability to still make contact with the real world to gather these supplies. And we also know that someone with a mask similar to what I would assume she would have has entered the games, and we know it is not her, as we saw her when the supplicant had put their mask on to enter the games, and she did not have a mask with her. This further reinforces the idea of two Evanscias existing at the same time. And the final one is one I've just recently come up with that I personally like, and I'm calling it Evanscia the Eternal Supplicant. This idea puts forward and builds upon my other one, with the idea that Evanscia was a previous winner of the Phantasmoon games, and who used her chance at the prize to always enter the games. This would explain her double and her ability to create masks, as she would become a rule, as her existence would be forced to become a rule in the game where she would always compete. And this would explain why she is locked in the courtyard and her double is able to compete, as I believe that during the game's beginnings, a new version of Evanscia is created to compete for her. This would mean Evanscia, as the identity, would always be participating in the games through the double, while it would not violate the rule that you can only enter the games once, as the original one would not be able to enter, but the idea of Evanscia would always be able to enter. And I believe it fits, as it has an elation sort of like twist to it, where she has got her wish, she's always able to compete, but she cannot compete more than once. The idea of her is competing more than once. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a nice day, or evening, or morning, or good night.